first 45 I got was a song called Sherry, and it was by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And I would play it over and over and over again because you could make it repeat on the stereo. And that was neat. I also, after I got a stereo and played with that a lot, came kind of an era of time where music started changing. And it was in the early 60s, and in fact it was about 1964, and the Beatles came out. I was in junior high school. I was in 7th grade, and I had choir, and our choir teacher would bribe us if we would do a good job in choir. He'd take the last 5-10 minutes and play Beatle music for us. So we would do a good job. The girls would scream and carry on listening to the Beatles, and the boys didn't like it very much, I remember. They kind of thought that was weird. But the Beatles came over to America, and they were appearing on Ed Sullivan. And Ed Sullivan had them on for 3 weeks in a row. So the first week it was on a Sunday, and in my family, Sunday was the day to go to church. And I just couldn't figure out what I was going to do because I had to stay home and watch the Beatles. Again, there was no VCRs and no instant recording. So I faked being sick so that I could stay home and watch the Beatles. And my parents didn't catch on and made it the first week. And they went to church, and I stayed home and watched the Beatles and cried and had a great time. And the second week came and tried to pull the same stunt again, but my dad had caught on and said that there were no Beatles on Sunday, that I had to go to church. So I went to church and smuggled my Beatle magazines to church with me and read the Beatles after church. I remember getting a transistor. I don't even know if you know what a transistor is, but a transistor was a new kind of radio at the time that didn't have to be plugged into the wall and ran on batteries. And it was exciting because you could take the transistor and carry it from room to room. It had a little stand that you could prop up, and that way you could take your music with you. And that was a big advance too. Mine was bright orange. It was about the size of maybe a Cracker Jack box, if you know the size of a Cracker Jack box. And it had a little dial on the front, and you could dial and change the stations. I don't remember it having earphones or anything like we have now, but it was battery operated and you could use it. The trick with my transistor was that Christmas for me is an exciting holiday, and I don't do well with surprises, and I'm always snooping. And I happened to find my transistor, and I played it and played it and played it before Christmas, and I got it on Christmas Day and the battery died. My dad thought something was wrong with the transistor and was going to take it back to the store, and I'm crying and begging him, please don't take it back. I want it. I want that orange one. Don't take it back. My dad was a great lover of all kinds of music, and he played music in our home a lot. When my brother and I wouldn't wake up in the mornings, he'd turn on his jazz or his blues music or big band, and he'd come down and grab us out of bed and want to dance with us and tease us with it. So I think that probably my love for music was instilled by my parents. He had a great love, but he didn't like modern rock music, and I can remember when the Beatles came out that he did not like that music. He did not like their hair. He just didn't want anything to do with it. And so what I would do is after school I'd come home and I had my Beatles albums or any of my favorite artists, and I'd play them on my stereo. And usually just before he would get home, he would take the bus and he would walk home, and we could see him coming around the corner. And so we'd kind of watch out. My brother would watch, and even sometimes my mom would watch out the window. And they'd yell down, "Dad's coming home," and I'd quickly put everything away and hide my Beatle albums because he was emphatic that that music wasn't going to be in his house. And little did he know that it was, and it was alive and kicking for many an hour just when he wasn't around. I'm trying to think if there's some others that were big highlights. Those are two that I can think of, is President Kennedy and the moonwalk. Both moonwalks. Mm-hmm. There was also another important moonwalk that Michael Jackson did.
Yes, well, why don't you tell me about that one?
Oh, that was a good one. That was on Motown 25. And I remember watching it because I tune into all the music awards. And I can remember him coming out on stage and singing with his brothers, and then he took the stage by himself. And people were watching, I was watching, and when he first did that moonwalk, there was a gasp in the audience, and I gasped at home. It was so, I hadn't seen anything like that. And it was so thrilling to be a part of that and be able to see that on TV. Mm-hmm. And to relive it, you know, because they made videos, they made CDs, they made things to go along with it. Just any of the performances like that. Mm-hmm. Oh, I do have a funny story. Okay. Kind of a funny story that was traumatic at the time, but my father passed away when we were young, and when we had his funeral, they had reel-to-reel taping at that time, if you know what that is. And they made a reel of his funeral, and I had it. My mom had given it to me, and I had it for a long time, and I never did anything with it. And so one Christmas I decided that I was going to get that reel out and have it made up on a disc for my brother, because I knew that that would be a really special gift for him. So I went to a company and had them do it, and it was pretty costly at that time. But I was really happy, and I thought I had found the perfect gift that would mean more than any material thing that you could get. And got it made up and had a copy made for all my family. And it was Christmas Eve, and I was at my sister's house, and we decided we were going to play it. And we put it on and started listening to it, and it started talking about things that I had no recollection of. And I'm the oldest in the family. And I thought, I don't remember any of this about my dad. And it kept going, and it talked about different things. And finally, I realized that this was not my dad. It was not my dad that they were talking about, that this was some foreign tape. And I just burst into tears, and I was a basket case because I thought I had found the perfect gift, and I was just destroyed. And my sister had to call my brother and tell his wife what was going on, and it was just devastating to me. And I called the mortuary, and I tried to find, you know, what could have happened, but it had been such a long time that there was no way I could retrieve that. And now it's kind of a family joke, and we laugh about it, about me finding the perfect gift, but it was the wrong person. Another funny story with media was, I told you how involved I was with soap operas, mm-hmm. and General Hospital is a soap opera I've watched since I was probably 12, 13 years old. And so it's a number of years I've watched it. So there's some characters on there. There's a character named Luke and a character named Laura, and they had a love affair, and they were getting married. And it's before VCRs. And I had to see the wedding. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So it's that dilemma. What do? Do you call in sick? Do you tell the truth? And I decided I'm just going to bite the bullet, and I'm going to go tell my principal what's going on. And so I went into my principal's office, and I said, look, I have to go to a wedding. I have to go to this wedding. And he said, well, that's okay. You've got personal leave. You can do that. And I said, well, you just don't understand. Let me tell you what's going on. So I told him that it was a soap opera, and that Luke and Laura were getting married, and I had watched them since I was a little girl. And I had to be there. I just had to be there. And he started laughing, and he kind of looked at me, and then he got a serious look on his face, and he said, you're serious, aren't you? And I said, yes. I said, I'm being totally truthful with you. I need to know if I can take an hour off and go to the wedding, or I'm going to have to call in sick or take personal leave. And he laughed and laughed after that. And he said, if you can get anybody to take your class for an hour, then you can go. You can go to the wedding. So I had a good friend who was a reading specialist, and she wasn't tied to the classes at that time. And I went in and I told her, I'll do anything for you if you'll take my class for an hour so I can come in and watch the show. And again, she laughed. She goes, you're really serious, aren't you? And I said, I'm dead serious. I either have to call in sick, I'm not going to miss the program. So she came in and took my class, and I went into her room and turned the old black and white on. No, I think it was color at that time. I think that we had gotten to color by that time in the school. Watched the wedding, cried and cried and cried, and then got my eyes wiped off and composed myself and went back and finished the day of teaching. And that's what you did in those days if you were hooked onto a soap or something, because we didn't have the recorders. And my friends that were there then, that's one of the fond memories of me and teaching, is the day that I took the hour off to go to the soap opera wedding in the library so that I could see it. So I'm a media lover.